Every year in America, more than 200,000 people over 65 suffer a hip fracture, and nearly a third of them will never walk independently again. Most of those falls happen not on icy sidewalks or steep stairs, but on flat ground in their own homes during ordinary movement. The shocking part is that standard walking routines, the ones doctors recommend most often, do almost nothing to prevent these injuries because they miss the one physical capacity that degrades fastest after 60 and determines whether you stay upright or hit the floor. What if everything you've been told about? Staying mobile after 65 is incomplete, and there's a single movement pattern practiced daily by millions of older adults in Japan that rebuilds that missing capacity in less time than your usual walk and protect you in ways cardiovascular exercise simply cannot? Right now, comment below with your age and where you're watching from. I want to know who's here because what I'm about to share applies differently depending on whether you're 65, 75, or 85, and I'll explain why in a moment. Here's what they don't tell you. Walking is wonderful for your heart and your mood and your endurance, but it trains your body in only one plane of motion, forward and backward, and it happens in a rhythm that's predictable. Your brain stops paying full attention after the first few minutes because the pattern repeats. That's fine until you step off a curb wrong, or your foot catches an edge, or you reach sideways for something on a shelf. In that instant, you need explosive strength, and muscles walking never fully wakes up. You need balance reactions faster than conscious thought. And you need joints that can handle load from angles you haven't practiced. Walking doesn't train any of that. The result is what researchers call the threshold moment. That fraction of a second when your body either catches itself or fails. And after 65, the ability to catch yourself drops by roughly half every decade if you don't train it on purpose. Now, I'm going to walk you through a single movement sequence that addresses all of those gaps, but here's the order we'll cover. First, I'll show you the basic form anyone can start today, even if you're using a walker. Second, I'll give you the 30-day progression that takes you from supported to freestanding. Third, the modification for people with knee or hip replacements. Fourth, how to stack this movement with 2 others to create a 5-minute morning routine that outperforms 30 minutes of walking for fall prevention. Fifth, the breathing pattern that doubles the cognitive benefit and why that matters for the 1 in 3 people over 80 who will face some form of dementia. Sixth, the timing detail almost everyone gets wrong that cuts your results in half. And finally, number 7, the single most powerful version of this movement. So simple you can do it while brushing your teeth, that a research group in Kyoto found improved one-legged standing time by 40% in just 8 weeks. I'm putting the most surprising one at number 2 and the most transformative one at the very end. So stay with me. Let's start with what this movement actually is. In Japan, it's called shiko, which translates roughly to sumo squat or stable root stance, and it's the foundation exercise every sumo wrestler practices thousands of times from childhood. But the version for older adults isn't about power or competition. It's about rebuilding what physical therapists call your base of support and training your body to react in multiple directions under load. Picture this. You stand with your feet wider than your shoulders, toes turned out about 30 degrees, and you lower your hips straight down while keeping your chest tall and your knees tracking over your toes. At the bottom, you pause for 1 breath, then you press through your heels to stand back up. That's 1 repetition. It sounds simple, but it does something walking cannot. It loads your hip abductors, the muscles on the outer thigh that stop you from tipping sideways. It strengthens your adductors on the inner thigh that stabilize your pelvis. It forces your ankle joints to work in a range walking never touches. And because you pause at the bottom, your nervous system has to reorganize balance from a position of instability, which is exactly the skill you need when you stumble. Why does this matter so much after 65? Because those hip abductors and adductors lose strength faster than almost any other muscle group when all you do is forward motion, and they're the first muscles that fire when you start to fall sideways. Research from universities in Japan tracking older adults over 10 years found that hip abduction strength, the force you can generate pushing your leg out to the side, predicted fall risk better than walking speed, Better than grip strength, better than overall leg power. In some of those analyses, participants in the lowest quartile for hip abduction strength had nearly 4 times the fall rate of those in the highest quartile. Yet almost no standard senior fitness program trains that movement because it's not part of walking or cycling or swimming. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 72, a former librarian in Ohio who loved her daily walks around the neighborhood 3 miles most mornings. She called me after her second fall in 6 months, both times catching her foot on nothing in particular and going down hard on her side. No fracture, but she was terrified. I watched her walk, and her gait was smooth, her endurance impressive. Then I asked her to stand on one leg. She lasted 4 seconds before her hip dropped and she had to catch herself. I had her try a basic squat with feet wide, and she couldn't get her hips below knee level without her knees caving inward. Those compensations told me her hip stabilizers were asleep. We started with supported Shiko, hands on a countertop, lowering just a few inches, 5 repetitions twice a day. Within 2 weeks, she could lower halfway without support. By 6 weeks, she was doing full-depth squats, 10 in a row, and her single-leg standing time had tripled. She told me the most remarkable change wasn't strength, it was confidence. She stopped thinking about falling every time she moved. Here's your basic protocol if you're starting today. Find a sturdy surface at hip height, a kitchen counter, or the back of a heavy chair. Place both hands lightly on that surface. Set your feet wider than shoulder width, toes angled out. Keep your spine neutral, chest lifted. Inhale as you lower your hips straight down as far as you can while keeping your heels flat and your knees tracking over your toes. Pause for 1 full breath at the bottom. Exhale and press through your heels to stand. That's 1. Start with 5 repetitions twice a day, morning and evening. If 5 feels too easy, do 8. If it feels hard, do 3 and add 1 each week. The key is the pause at the bottom. That's where the balance training happens. Now, here's where people make the first mistake, and why number 6 on our list, the timing detail, will matter in a minute. Most people rush the descent. They drop down fast and bounce back up. That trains momentum, not control. You want the opposite. Take 2 full seconds to lower. Pause for a breath, then 2 seconds to rise. Slow is hard. Slow is where strength builds. And slow is what saves you when you trip because falls happen in slow motion for the first half second before momentum takes over. If your muscles can't produce force slowly, they won't catch you. Let's move to number 2. The modification for people with joint replacements, and this is the one that surprises everyone. If you've had a hip or knee replacement in the past 5 years, you might have been told to avoid deep squatting because of the angle at the joint. That advice is outdated for most modern implants, but let's be safe. Here's the smarter version. Do everything exactly the same, but limit your depth so your thigh stays above parallel to the floor. You'll still get nearly all the benefit because the muscle activation peaks in the top half of the range anyway. The second modification is foot position. If turning your toes out 30 degrees bothers your knee, turn them out only 15 degrees and widen your stance another few inches. That shifts the load slightly and usually eliminates discomfort. I worked with a man named Robert, 79, 8 months post-op from a total knee replacement on his right side. His surgeon had cleared him for all activity, but he was nervous. We started with quarter-depth Shiko, hands on a counter, feet very wide, toes barely turned out. He did 5 repetitions and felt nothing but muscle work, no joint pain. Over 3 months, he gradually increased depth, and now he squats to a full 90 degrees. No support, 15 repetitions every morning. His physical therapist said his surgical knee is now stronger in rotational stability than his natural one. That's not unusual. The movement teaches the joint to handle real-world forces. Here's the kicker. Those real-world forces, the ones that cause falls, almost never happen in a straight line. You're turning to look over your shoulder while walking. You're stepping sideways to let someone pass. You're reaching diagonally for a dish. Every one of those actions requires your hips and knees to stabilize under rotation, and walking forward doesn't train rotation at all. Shiko does because your feet are wide and turned out, which preloads your hips in external rotation. Every time you squat, you're teaching your body to own that range under load. It's like the difference between reading about swimming and getting in the water. Walking tells your body about movement. Shiko makes your body live it. Now, let's talk about number 4, the 5-minute morning stack, because this is where the magic compounds. Shiko by itself is powerful, but when you pair it with 2 other movements in sequence, you create what researchers in Tokyo call a multi-planar stability circuit, and the results go beyond anything one exercise can deliver. Here's the stack. Start with 10 slow Shiko repetitions, full depth if you can, supported if you need it. Immediately after the last squat, stay in the wide stance and shift your weight fully onto your right leg, lifting your left foot an inch off the ground. Hold that single leg stance for 10 seconds, then switch sides. That's your lateral balance challenge. Now step your feet together and stand on one leg, whichever feels steadier, and hold for 20 seconds. If you can't hold 20, hold for as long as you can and note the time. That's your sagittal balance, the forward-backward plane. Finally, still standing, close your eyes and count to 10. Eyes closed eliminates visual input and forces your vestibular system, the balance organ in your inner ear, to take over. If you feel wobbly, open your eyes. The whole sequence takes 5 minutes. Do it every morning before breakfast. Why does this stack matter so much? Because balance isn't one skill. It's the coordinated output of 3 systems working together. Your visual system tells you where you are in space, your vestibular system senses motion and gravity, and your proprioceptive system, the nerve endings in your muscles and joints, reports position and tension. After 65, all 3 systems degrade, but at different rates depending on your health history. Walking trains primarily proprioception in one plane. The 5-minute stack trains all 3 systems in all 3 planes, and it teaches them to back each other up. When one system falters, the other 2 compensate automatically. That's what keeps you upright when the lights go out or when you step on an uneven surface. Let me tell you about Linda. She was 81. Living alone in Florida, sharp as ever, but her daughter was worried because Linda had started holding onto walls when she walked through her house. Linda insisted she was fine. I asked her to try the stack for 30 days and report back. She was skeptical but agreed. After 1 week, she noticed she wasn't reaching for the wall anymore. After 3 weeks, she walked her dog again, something she'd stopped doing because she didn't trust herself on the sidewalk. After 2 months, her daughter called me and said Linda had started going to her book club meetings again, events she'd been skipping because they were in the evening, and she didn't feel safe moving around in dim light. Linda told me the single-leg eyes closed part was the hardest at first. She could barely last 3 seconds, but by week 6, she was up to 12 seconds, and she said it felt like her brain had rewired. That's not metaphor. It actually does rewire. The cerebellum, the part of your brain that coordinates movement, grows new connections when you practice unstable positions. And that growth is visible on imaging studies even in people over 80. Here's the protocol detail most people miss, and this is number 6, the timing mistake that cuts your results in half. Your nervous system learns balance best when you're fresh, not fatigued. If you do your Shiko stack at the end of the day after you've been on your feet for hours, your muscles are tired and your brain is running on fumes. You'll still get some strength benefit, but the neurological adaptation, the part that prevents falls, will be blunted. The ideal time is first thing in the morning, after you've used the bathroom but before breakfast, when your cortisol is naturally elevated and your nervous system is primed to encode new motor patterns. If morning is impossible, then late morning before lunch is second best. Avoid evening. One study out of Osaka compared 2 groups of older adults doing identical balance training, one group in the morning, one in the evening. After 12 weeks, the morning group showed twice the improvement in reaction time and single-leg stance duration. Same exercise, different time, vastly different outcome. Now let's get to number 5, the breathing pattern that doubles the cognitive benefit, because this is where Shiko becomes more than a physical practice. Every time you lower into the squat, you inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. At the bottom, you hold your breath for a count of 2. As you rise, you exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. That's a 4-2-6 rhythm. The extended exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for calm and recovery, and the breath hold at the bottom increases carbon dioxide in your blood slightly, which improves oxygen delivery to your brain. Do this for 10 repetitions, and you've just completed a mild respiratory training session on top of the movement. The result is what Japanese practitioners call concentrated calm, a state where your body is working but your mind is clear. Why does this matter for cognition? Because balance training with controlled breathing has been shown in multiple trials to improve executive function, the high-level thinking that governs planning, decision-making, and memory. One analysis from a university in Tokyo followed 200 adults over 70 for a year. Half did standard walking for 30 minutes daily. Half did 10 minutes of breath-focused balance movements, including Shiko, every morning. At the end of the year, the walking group showed no change in cognitive testing. The balance breath group improved their scores by an average of 12%, and the benefit was largest in tasks requiring spatial reasoning and reaction time, precisely the skills that prevent falls and preserve independence. I worked with a man named George, 76, a retired engineer in Michigan. He came to me not for falls but because his wife said he was getting forgetful, missing appointments, repeating questions. His doctor had started the conversation about early cognitive decline. I taught George the Shiko stack with the 4-2-6 breathing pattern and asked him to do it every morning for 8 weeks. At week 4, he told me he felt sharper, less foggy in the afternoon. At week 8, his wife called me and said George was back to doing the daily crossword, something he'd given up months earlier because it frustrated him. I don't claim this reversed anything, but it clearly supported his brain at a time when support mattered. The mechanism isn't mysterious. Your brain runs on oxygen and glucose, and anything that improves blood flow and oxygenation helps. The balance challenge adds another layer because it forces your brain to integrate sensory information quickly, and that integration is exercise for your neurons. Here's a question for you. Have you noticed any changes in your balance or confidence moving around in the past year? Drop a comment and let me know because what you're experiencing is probably more common than you think, and it helps everyone here to know they're not alone. Now, we're ready for number 3, the 30-day progression that takes you from supported to freestanding. And this is your roadmap. Days 1 through 7, do 5 supported Shiko twice a day, hands on a counter, descending only as far as feels controlled. Focus on keeping your chest up and your knees tracking over your toes. Days 8 through 14, reduce hand pressure on the counter so you're using just fingertips for light balance reference. Descend a few inches deeper if you can. Increase to 8 repetitions. Days 15 through 21, try 1 or 2 repetitions with no hand support. Stand near the counter so you can catch yourself if needed, but don't touch it unless you must. Do 6 with support, 2 without. Days 22 through 30. Aim for all 10 repetitions freestanding. If you can't do 10, do as many as you can freestanding and finish the set with support. By day 30, most people can complete 10 full-depth freestanding squats with control. If you're not there yet, repeat week 4 for another week. There's no prize for speed. The goal is owning the movement. One thing to watch for during the progression is knee collapse. If your knees dive inward as you squat, that's a sign your hip abductors aren't firing correctly. The fix is simple. Before you descend, think about pushing your knees outward as if you're trying to spread the floor apart with your feet. That cue activates the right muscles and usually solves the problem immediately. If it doesn't, add a resistance band around your thighs just above your knees. The band gives you something to push against and wakes up the stabilizers. Use the band for a week or 2, then remove it. Your body will remember the pattern. Here's what people don't expect. Somewhere around day 10 or 12, the movement starts to feel natural, almost automatic, and that's when you know your nervous system has accepted it. You stop thinking about each part and you just do it. That transition is the goal of any good movement practice. It means the pattern is encoded and your body will use it in real life when you need it. Now, we're at number 7. the most powerful version of this movement, the one that changes everything. And it's so simple you'll wonder why no one told you about it before. It's called the single-leg shiko, or in some circles, the archer squat. Here's how it works. You start in the wide shiko stance, but instead of lowering straight down, you shift your weight entirely onto one leg and bend that knee, lowering your hips toward that heel while the opposite leg stays straight. Your bent knee side does all the work. Your straight leg side is just along for the ride. You descend as far as you can with control, pause, then press back to center. That's one side. Now shift to the other leg and repeat. This variation is brutally effective because it isolates each leg completely, exposing any strength imbalance, and it demands even more from your stabilizers because your base is narrower. The balance challenge goes up, the strength demand goes up, and the carryover to real-world stumble recovery is massive. The research I mentioned from Kyoto involved 50 adults between 70 and 85 who added just 5 single-leg shiko per side to their morning routine, 3 days a week. They didn't change anything else. After 8 weeks, their single-leg standing time, a gold standard measure of fall risk, improved by an average of 40%. For context, most balance interventions show a 10 to 15% improvement. 40% is extraordinary. The reason is specificity. Single-leg shiko is almost identical to the motion your body makes when it catches a stumble. You shift weight fast onto one leg, that leg has to absorb and stabilize load from an awkward angle, and you have to do it without thinking. Training that exact pattern makes your body ready when it happens for real. Let me tell you about Paul. He was 83, a retired pilot living in Arizona. Sharp, independent, but he'd had a close call stepping off his porch and his confidence was shaken. I taught him the single-leg shiko using a railing for light fingertip support. He did 5 per side every morning while waiting for his coffee to brew. It took him 90 seconds. After 6 weeks, he told me he'd stepped in a hole in his yard, a spot where a sprinkler had eroded the soil and his right leg just reacted. He said it felt like his body knew what to do before his brain caught up. He didn't fall. He didn't even stumble hard. His leg absorbed the drop and he kept walking. He said that moment was worth every single repetition because he realized his body was on his side again. Here's your protocol for the single-leg version. Start with a support, a chair back or a railing. Wide stance, toes out. Shift your weight onto your right leg and bend that knee, lowering your hips toward your right heel as far as you can control. Keep your chest tall. Your left leg stays straight, foot flat if possible, or heel lifting slightly if that's more comfortable. Pause for 1 breath at the bottom, then press through your right heel to return to center. Do 5 on the right, then 5 on the left. If 5 is too many, do 3. If you can't get very deep, go as far as you can. Depth will come. Do this 3 times a week, not daily, because the intensity is higher and your body needs recovery time. Within a month, you'll notice the difference. Your legs will feel more solid under you, your hips will feel more stable, and that constant low-level worry about falling will start to fade. Here's the final piece, and this is where we tie it all together. Shiko, in all its variations, isn't just about preventing falls. It's about reclaiming agency over your body. After 65, the cultural message is to slow down. Be careful, don't take risks, and that message is poison because it trains learned helplessness. Your body starts to believe it's fragile, so it moves tentatively, and tentative movement makes you weaker, which makes you more fragile, and the cycle accelerates. Shiko interrupts that cycle. It teaches your body that it's strong, that it can handle load, that it can recover from instability. That lesson changes how you move through the world. You stop walking like you're made of glass. You stop avoiding stairs or uneven ground. You start trusting yourself again. The Japanese have a concept called genki, which loosely means vibrant health or spirited energy. It's not about being young. It's about being fully alive in the body you have, at the age you are. Older adults in Japan who practice shiko and similar movements daily embody genki. They move with purpose and confidence. They don't shuffle. They don't freeze when the ground changes. They adapt. That's what this movement gives you if you commit to it. Not perfection, not immunity from aging, but adaptability. And adaptability is the difference between independence and dependence, between living in your home and living in a facility, between going where you want and being afraid to leave the house. One more thing, you don't have to do this alone. If you have a partner or a friend who's also over 65, do the 5-minute stack together every morning. Make it a ritual. You'll keep each other accountable and you'll both benefit. If you live alone, set a timer on your phone for the same time every day. The consistency is what makes it work. Your body adapts to what you do regularly, not what you do once in a while. So here's my question for you, and I really want to hear your answer. Which part of this are you going to try first? The basic supported Chico, the 5-minute stack, the breathing pattern, or the single-leg version? And what's the one change in your balance or movement that would make the biggest difference in your confidence right now? Comment below and tell me, because your answer might be exactly what someone else here needs to hear.